Flynn Fisher pedaled hard through the humid streets of White Creek, sweat beading under her helmet as she raced home from the pharmacy. She pushed open the sagging front door of the old house she shared with her mother and brother and darted straight to the kitchen. There, her mom sat by the window, sightless eyes fixed toward the sun. "Mom," Flynn called softly, crouching by her side. She slipped the last pill from the prescription bottle, her heart sinking. One left. Upstairs, she heard Burton's laughter echo through the floorboards, the familiar grunts and crashes of a virtual battlefield roaring from his room. Flynn's stomach tightened. She knew that laugh, the one he let out when he was flush with adrenaline and half-drunk on the thrill of combat. He was probably playing High On again, the VR war game that paid out cash to veterans for high-level wins. Flynn stormed upstairs, shoving open the door to Burton's room. Her brother sat in his haptic rig, headset over his eyes, fingers twitching on the controls. "Burton," she snapped, "did you take Mom's pills?" Burton didn't pause. He smirked. "Relax, Flynn. I just need to clear this next level. $1,000, easy. I'll buy more pills." "That's enough for one pill, Burton," Flynn shot back. "One." Burton sighed, yanked off his headset, and ruffled her hair with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Big money's coming tonight. Promise." He got up, stretching. "Hey, take over for me. Just hold the line till I get back. Bathroom's calling." Before Flynn could argue, Burton shoved the headset into her hands. Against her better judgment, she slid it on. The world shifted. Suddenly, Flynn was no longer in her brother's room, but crouched behind digital sandbags, gunfire rattling through her senses. Her fingers moved instinctively, toggling through weapons, issuing commands, calculating angles. The game responded like an extension of her body. She tore through the level with a precision Burton had never managed, finishing just as he came back into the room. "You," Burton breathed, eyes wide, "are a damn natural." Later, Flynn hopped on her bike and pedaled toward town, her mind racing faster than her wheels. She stopped by the 3D print shop where she worked, where her friend Billy Ann lounged behind the counter, tapping at her nails. "You gotta talk to Tommy," Billy Ann teased. Flynn flushed. Tommy, the town sheriff, had been her quiet crush for months. Tall, steady, way too old for her and about to be married. "Not interested," Flynn mumbled, avoiding the topic. "You could make real money gaming, you know," Billy Ann added, shifting topics. "You're better than Burton." Flynn shook her head. "Not my life." But fate was already moving. That evening, a package arrived, sleek, black, stamped with an unfamiliar Colombian company's logo. Burton tore it open, revealing a state-of-the-art VR headset, slimmer and sharper than anything Flynn had ever seen. "What's this?" she asked warily. "Beta test," Burton said, running a finger along the sleek edge. "They want me to run it. Big bucks." "They want you?" "You've never cleared 100 levels," Flynn pointed out. Burton gave her a knowing look. "Yeah, but someone did, using my avatar," he grinned. "You're the one they want." Flynn's stomach fluttered. She hesitated. But the thought of her mother's medicine cabinet, of the past due bills stacked on the kitchen table, of the weariness behind Burton's forced bravado, it all stacked up fast. "Fine," she murmured. The headset slipped over her eyes. Flynn blinked. She was straddling a motorcycle, leather gloves on her hands, the London skyline glittering under steel gray skies. Her avatar was tall, broad-shouldered. She realized with a jolt it was Burton's body, but under her control. "Welcome, Flynn," a woman's voice purred inside her head. "I'm Alita. You're in my world now." Flynn revved the engine, heart hammering, grinning despite herself. "Let's begin." Flynn woke with a start, her body drenched in sweat, heart pounding like a war drum. The sensation of the simulation still clung to her skin, the cold London wind, the ache in her arms from throttling the motorcycle, the raw sting of the fight she barely survived. But now she was back in her small bedroom, the soft creak of the old house under her feet, the faint hum of the 3D printers in town rolling through her window. She staggered to the bathroom, gripping the sink as a wave of dizziness swept over her. When she lifted her head, she caught sight of herself in the mirror, pale, shaken, eyes wide, with something that wasn't just fear. It was excitement, too. But the real world wasn't waiting. Downstairs, her mother coughed softly in the living room, and Flynn spotted Burton hunched over his gear, his face lined with tension. There was no time to rest. She grabbed her bike and rode to the pharmacy, clutching the small roll of cash she'd scraped together. The drug dealer behind the counter barely glanced at her. "One pill. That's not worth my time." Flynn's throat tightened. "Please, it's for my mom," the dealer smirked. "Not my problem." A sharp voice cut in from behind. "It's about to be." Flynn turned to see Connor, Burton's old military buddy, his hulking figure stepping into the light. The dealer froze. Connor didn't have to say another word. Flynn left with the pill clenched in her fist, heart pounding, not just with relief, but with the sharp edge of new fear. That night, Flynn watched through the window as Burton wrestled with the aftershocks of his haptic implants, wincing and gripping the table as the connections flared across his nerves. Flynn's chest tightened. He was tied to his old unit not just in memory, but in pain. Every wound, every ache they felt, he felt too. Then the voice came. Flynn was called back to the headset, to the shimmering world of future London. But this time it wasn't a mission. She jolted awake inside the simulation, strapped to a table. Panic surged as she realized she couldn't move. Alita appeared, her calm voice threading into Flynn's ear. "We're replacing your eye. Marielle's biometric data is the key we need." "No sedation," Alita added. "I need you to understand this isn't real, even when it hurts." Flynn's screams rang through the lab as the surgery began, her body arching against invisible restraints. But through the terror, through the searing pain, she clung to Alita's one instruction: control your heartbeat. Somehow, shaking, sobbing, Flynn forced herself to steady her breath. When she next woke, she was in a sleek car beside Alita. The cold rush of the air outside steadied her. The pain ebbed, but the fear stayed sharp. They pulled up to the Research Institute's headquarters, a monolith of glass and steel, and Alita guided her through the levels, using Marielle's stolen eye to bypass every security checkpoint. Deep below ground, at the heart of the building, they reached a strange triangular device. "Place your eye here," Alita instructed. Your real eye, not hers." Flynn hesitated, instincts screaming to pull away, but she forced herself to obey. The laser shot out, searing bright, and she clenched her jaw, tasting the bitter tang of adrenaline. Then the attack came. A man arrived, his face sharp with intent, a sonic weapon slung over his shoulder. The air cracked with force as he unleashed it, knocking both Flynn and Alita to the floor. Flynn realized with a jolt that her avatar, no, her peripheral, wasn't human. She was fighting in a robot body. She scrambled up, distracting the man just long enough for Alita to slip away. But the sonic blast caught her in the skull, frying her system, and she was ripped from the simulation with the force of a detonation. Flynn lurched back to the real world, gagging, collapsing onto the floor, body shuddering with the aftershocks. "I'm done," she whispered hoarsely to Burton. "I'm never playing that sick game again." But the world outside had other plans. The next morning, Flynn confided in Billy Ann, spilling everything. The missions, the pain, the terrifying realism. Billy Ann listened, wide-eyed, shock written across her face. "It's not a game," Flynn murmured, voice trembling. I think I'm really there, inside a machine, somewhere." Then came the call. Wilf Netherton's voice crackled through the line, sharp and urgent. "Flynn, you're in danger. You need to log back in." Flynn's blood ran cold. On the edge of town, Sheriff Tommy followed two unfamiliar vehicles, their plates smeared with mud, their shapes too clean, too polished to belong in White Creek. He watched as they shimmered, then vanished, cloaked, invisible. By the time Tommy realized what he was facing, it was too late. At the 3D printer shop, every machine flickered to life. Wilf's voice poured from the speakers. "There's a $9 million bounty on your family's heads. They're coming." Flynn raced home, the streets blurring around her. Burton barely flinched when she burst in. His old unit was already assembling, pulling out weapons, huddling around the hacked drone feed. One of them, Connor, only grunted, "About time." Flynn's heart seized. "Burton, this is real." "Yeah," Burton murmured, loading his rifle. "We got that part." Outside, the elite squad crept closer, their vehicles shimmering in and out of view. Guns raised. The battle cracked open with terrifying force. Drones diving, men shouting, gunfire ripping through the night. Flynn cowered behind the couch, trembling, as a soldier stormed the house, gun swinging toward her. She braced for impact, and Burton tackled the man to the ground. The firefight raged until Connor's arrival tipped the balance, driving the last of the squad into the dirt. In London, Wilf sat in a shadowed room as Lev Zubov leaned over his shoulder. "They survived," Lev said calmly. "We'll need her again." Flynn collapsed into a chair, face buried in her hands, chest heaving. Her hands still shook as Burton gently placed the headset on the table in front of her. "Flynn," he murmured, "we need answers." Flynn looked up, her eyes burning, her body aching, her mind still halfway between two worlds. She knew it wasn't over. She reached for the headset. Flynn sat on the front steps of the house, knees pulled to her chest, the cool night air brushing against her skin. Behind her, the old wooden boards of the porch creaked as Burton paced, his boots tapping out a restless rhythm. Somewhere inside, their mother was humming softly, her sight miraculously restored, a fragile reminder of everything they'd been handed and everything they still stood to lose. Flynn gripped the headset in her lap like it was a live wire. Burton's voice came low from behind. "We don't have to keep going, you know." Flynn looked up at the stars, wondering if in some other timeline, in some other version of her life, she'd be just a girl working at a print shop, flirting with the sheriff, dreaming small-town dreams. But now she knew too much. "I do," she murmured. When she slipped on the headset, the world fell away. London emerged around her like a memory flooding back. The cold glow of street lamps, the hushed hum of electric cars, the thin veil of fog curling along the river. But this time, when Flynn looked down, she didn't see Burton's broad frame. She saw herself, her own hands, her own body. Wilf waited on the curb, hands in his pockets, eyes sharp and tired. He didn't waste time. "We need to find Alita." Flynn followed him through narrow alleys and glimmering streets, their footsteps quickening as the pieces came together. She felt his presence at her side, not just in sound or movement, but in sensation, their minds linked through the haptics, his heartbeat flickering against her own. It was unsettling, exhilarating, dangerous. They reached the old building, tucked in the shadow of towers that scraped the sky. Inside, everything was wrong. Surgical equipment scattered across the floor, two inert peripherals slumped in chairs, their blank eyes staring into nothing. On a table lay a model of Flynn's own house, every window, every door, every angle mapped and studied. Her breath caught. "What the hell is this?" she whispered. Before Wilf could answer, the air snapped, electric. Daniel stormed in, weapon raised, the research institute's cold blade at his back. And beside him, a gleaming android, its eyes burning with the intelligence of Newland herself. The fight was brutal. Flynn ducked and swung, her movements sharp, desperate, her peripheral body pushed to its limits. Wilf crumpled under the weight of Daniel's blows. Flynn roared, tackled the android, demanded answers. "What did I take?" she shouted, slamming the machine against the wall. Daniel's lips curled into a thin, knowing smile. "You're the key," he rasped, and before he could say more, the android's blade sliced clean through his throat. Flynn's scream tore through the room as she lunged, tearing the android apart piece by piece, rage and fear knotting in her chest. The sparks crackled around her, the air thick with the smell of burning metal. And then, silence. She dropped to her knees beside Wilf, who blinked up at her with a pained smile. "You're not just part of this, Flynn," he murmured, his voice faint. "You are this." Back in White Creek, Flynn tore off the headset, her lungs heaving, her heart slamming against her ribs. Burton caught her as she stumbled, steadying her. "It's over," Flynn gasped. "For now." But she knew it wasn't. Across town, Corbell Pickett sat in his office, the glow of transferred funds reflected in his eyes, his fingers drumming thoughtfully on the desk. Somewhere, Newland watched the feed from the ruined lab, her lips pressed into a thin, unforgiving line. And in the future, Wilf stood at the edge of the Thames, the cold wind tugging at his coat, staring into the fractured city and wondering just how deep this war would go. Flynn lay in her bed that night, the hum of the 3D printers echoing softly through the walls, her mother's laughter drifting faintly from the next room. She was no longer the girl from White Creek. She was the girl who walked in two worlds, and in both, the storm was just beginning. As she closed her eyes, Flynn made herself a silent promise. No matter what came next, she would survive it. She would own it. Because some games you don't get to quit, and some timelines you have to fight to keep.